Wargaming with Jared. Let's build an army.
Hello YouTube, Jared here again with another video. I have been very busy with life and with all kinds of other craziness going on, but I am still trying to get 11 armies painted in 11th edition with a goal of finishing 11 armies to at least 2,000 points by next year. And so even with all the craziness and not having as much time to paint recently, I am still slowly plucking away at it. I'm working on my Chaos Space Marines, and so while I try to catch up on doing the metallic paint on some Chaos Cultists and some other Chaos models, I figured it'd be fun to make another video and chat about some of my recent thoughts on the hobby. You see, I've been predominantly just a painter for the last couple years, and so I have spent a lot of time painting and not a lot of time playing. I have multiple armies I've painted and never actually played, especially when it comes to Age of Sigmar. The guy I was playing with fell off the radar a little while ago, and then I had a new baby last year, and well, it's been one thing after another with the new job. So I haven't been playing in a long time. And then just in the last couple months, I've finally found a couple of friends to start playing with. So I've got a couple guys I've played with, a couple guys I've talked to, and we're going to play a game. And now that I've got a couple games of 11th edition under my belt, I realized that it's starting to change the way that I think about painting. And it's not a topic I really see a lot of coverage on YouTube about. And so I figured while I do some painting on these guys, get some speed paint here on my paper plate, it's something that I think is worth thinking through. How does playing the game change how you paint your models? There's some obvious things, of course. If you're rushing to finish an army for a game, which has happened to me on a few occasions, it's more likely that you'll actually get stuff finished if you have a use for it right away. And so that's probably the most obvious version of the question of, you know, actually having people to play with means that I want to get those models done for the game I want to play and the lists I want to run. But even more than that, just a deeper appreciation for the game. Like, I've always known in my mind that I liked the idea of Warhammer, and the few games I'd played early on, I really enjoyed. But having now played a few games, it's genuinely a really fun game. It's a really great time. Even though these are basically the same model, I'm going to paint slightly different colors so that not everybody's a twin. But it has been so fun to actually get some armies on the tabletop. So I played a game with Tau and Space Marines, another game with Necrons and Space Marines, and then another game with Eldarian Space Marines. And so the friend I have over, and it's been a couple different people, has usually picked Space Marines, and then I usually play whatever else I have. And so it has been nice to actually be getting my 40k armies on the table. Unlike my Age of Sigmar project, where almost nothing got to the table, I am actually getting armies on the table and getting to play. And so that has colored some stuff. And so I made a couple of notes, couple of thoughts on how this is changing things. One of them big ones is that originally the plan was to paint these big, massive armies of whatever models I scraped together. And I'm starting to realize now that maybe that's not the best idea. I've painted certain models only to realize that maybe I should have not painted so quickly and waited until I had an actual list to paint the models. And so I've actually had a couple times where I've regretted it. I am getting ready to strip the first model ever that I painted myself, and that's the Librarian and Terminator armor that I painted as I think I'll do all that in the metallics. I painted him as an Imperial Fist, and then realized after the first game that the fact that he doesn't have models to run with makes him completely useless. There's no reason to have him in the army. I need more Terminators to go with the Terminator. And so I had more Terminators, but I wanted to paint those as something else because I didn't need 80. I didn't need 20 Terminators in one list. I didn't really want a skew list. I didn't need that. I had other models for that list. And so he is going to be repainted with those extra Terminators that I got from Kit Bash. I think I made a video about that. They're going to get turned into Blood Angels eventually. When I do a Blood Angel army, it'd be fun to have a Librarian and some Terminators. And I have it, and I'm never going to use it as Imperial Fist, so might as well save it for a rainy day and pull it out of the pile then, instead of trying to rush to paint stuff. And so I'm starting to realize I need to slow down and think a little more about army composition. And so making sure that what I'm painting is a coherent army and not just raw 200 points of armies. I think that's important. And I think that's advice I don't hear newer players given enough is make sure your army is coherent. Paint a balanced amount of leaders. Paint a balanced amount of leaders that actually work well with your army. I think for Space Marines, the obvious one is if you're building Phobos armor, you want Phobos armor heroes. If you're painting Terminators, you want Terminator heroes. You want your heroes and your infantry to match. You want to make sure that if you're painting a Rhino, you have models that can go in a Rhino, which is why all of my Rhinos are going Chaos, because I have Chaos that can ride on Rhinos, but I don't have any tactical squads for Space Marines that could ride on a Rhino. And so just making sure that you can actually enjoy stuff on the table is important. You'll notice that I'm really slopping the paint on here, especially with the speed paint. I'm not worried too much about staying in the lines. For my first few rounds of paint, I always start black primer, and then I do a white dry brush really rough and picking out the details so it's easy to follow up. But if I want to do more white primer, I do. Ooh, that ran though. And then for the metallics, I always paint them fast because I find they tend to run the most. Let that fully dry, and then I'll come back and clean this up with black and white or undercoat colors, and there'll be 2 or 3 colors, and by the time it's done, it will look just fine. But the first couple layers of paint, you really don't have to stay in the lines near as much as you think you would. So as nice as it is to go really slowly for every single paint, sometimes you can go really fast, and I hate painting with metallics. They just have a worse run to them, some of them anyways. Not all of them. There's better ones out there now, especially these Army Paint or Speed Paint and kind of the classical Citadel, which is what I use. But certain metallic brands I find are just streaky and hard to use, and being able to just kind of layer stuff up is nice. And then, of course, you can put washes and other stuff on it to make it look good. But I'm just kind of blocking in where I want all these colors, and if I want to go back with another layer later, I can. But for now, it's just kind of picking stuff out as I see it. Okay, yeah, we'll hit this bit in the Hoplite Gold as well, too. Colors I'm using today are mixture of your classic Citadel, so I got Lead Belcher. I have Rune Brass, and then I have the silver one as well for Citadel that I really love. And then the Speed Paint Army Painters, these 2.0s, these are the best metallics on the market. I have never found anything as good as these golds. Just the flow on them, like you can see it. One quick coat, you tap a tiny drop on like that, and it's done. It is just such a nice flow. It doesn't matter. You can do it and it looks good over a white. You can do it looks good over a black. I like to do it over white and black like this, just so it picks up a little bit more of the shadows. It's just such an easy paint to use. I'm gonna get that pipe, I think. But I'm a big fan of these paints. But back to the topic at hand. I think I'm getting more consistent with my list building, and I'm slowing down. Because early on, it was whatever like secondhand models I can get my hands onto. That's what I was going to paint. And I'm starting to realize more and more, I want to actually paint stuff that I can play, and I'll play and enjoy. So things with rules that I actually like, things that have, you know, tabletop potential and not just a painting project. Now that I've got so many things painted, I don't need to be rushing myself as much. And so I'm trying to be a little more strategic. My Ultramarines army, because it was the first one and it was whatever I could get my hands on, is very intercessor and assault intercessor heavy. And the downside of that is it's not great on the table. So my last game, the Eldari were able to absolutely hose through the weaker infantry. So I brought Wrath Lords and Wrath Knights, and they did an absolute number on the poor intercessors. And so it was kind of funny, but also felt bad for my opponent because his models were dying a lot faster than my models, and his stuff was a lot weaker. Because Ultramarine, he was playing Ultramarines, and I don't have any it was my Ultramarines, and I don't have any Ultramarine Terminators. They're majority a little bit weaker. And so the Eldari army was super elite, and the Ultramarines were actually the much weaker faction in terms of lighter armor and higher numbered models. And so even though the Ultramarines actually had more models, the clear advantage was for Team Eldari, and so I was able to win that game pretty handily. But still, I'm going to do more metal on him. Still, it was an interesting game, and we both had a great time playing. But I've enjoyed playing the game. I think Warhammer is a really fun game, and it's really modular. The new way to play with the rules generation, I've been able to find enough stuff online without owning the cards to play it. There's websites that host that kind of stuff. What is this guy's face? but it's very playable. If you know where to look and you Google around, you can find everything. And a lot of the resources are free on Warcom. But I thought it was a good time. We had a great time in the 2 or 3 games now that I've played of 11th edition. So I really enjoy it, and I want to play more. Now that I know I want to play more, I want to make sure what I'm painting actually lends to that. Another thing I think that's really important to recognize that I needed to be reminded of, and so hopefully this is a good reminder for you too, is that base infantry can actually be really fun. And so, yeah, there are moments where your infantry runs across the field and just immediately dies. Like, that is a point of the game. And so it's like, okay, I spent, 20 hours painting that and it died before it got a first shot off. That's always kind of a feel bad moment. But there are other moments where you paint something silly like a chaff unit and it rolls a bunch of 6s and does something awesome. And so I have a slowly accruing pile of random infantry models who did something really cool. And there's now this thought in my mind of, it'd be fun to go back and add a skull to the base or paint him a little bit better just to signify the fact that this guy was the MVP in the game. So the one of the leaders of my Ard boys for my Age of Sigma army just refused to die in a game a few years ago. And I still remember that game because he just kept rolling 6s on his save rolls, and he just wouldn't die. And so we had such a laugh, me and my friends who were playing that game, about this orc who wouldn't die. And he killed all these Sylvaneth. And so we were joking, we need to put a Sylvaneth skull on his base because, he hosed them all down. And now even 3 years later, I'm still kind of thinking about, I should really go back and put that skull on his base because he earned it. And then in that last game, my Wrath Lords are painted pretty simply because I wasn't expecting them to be a favorite model. And I like their kind of clean, simple look, but it might be fun to go back and, touch them up a little bit or add a Space Marine helmet to their base just to signify that that unit was special in battle. And so I've watched a few YouTubers over the years who talked about how they love to go back and decorate their models to celebrate victories. And I never really seriously considered that. I always thought that was just kind of endlessly fiddling. And if you only have one army, that makes sense. But, I'm painting all these armies, so I don't want to go back and paint stuff. But having actually played now, I get the appeal of that. I get the appeal. Now, this squad of Chaos guys over here had a 10th man, but I used him to finish another squad that was incomplete. And so I got a couple of random guys from a box. This guy was from a random trade deal, not an official GW model, but he looks pretty much like it. And so I don't know this guy's story, but he looks close enough to this squad. He's like a mine layer or something, that he's going to go right with these Chaos Cultists. And so, welcome to the team, buddy. He's going to be my sneaky, not official GW model, because sometimes you just got to sneak an extra model in there that's from another line or from another range, or he might have been a 3D print, actually. I don't know. Somebody printed him or bought him and didn't want him, but I needed a model to blend in with these crazy boys, and he fits in perfectly, and so he's joining the squad. So there's 20 of them here, and then I have another 10 already painted. I think I'm going to run the 10 I already have painted as Trader Guard, and then these guys right here have two-handed weapons, so they make a good Trader Guard, and then keep these guys as a Cultist mob. But these guys I could run as a Cultist mob too. There's really nothing stopping me from doing both, and so that's kind of where it's looking right now. But all right, Hoplite Gold's done on all 20 of these boys. It is Lead Belcher time, and hope I don't spill it. I'm gonna move my plate out of the way so I don't bump it. But yeah, just thinking through these armies, I think I want to actually consider going back and touching up older models and, giving them a little bit of memoriam to kind of celebrate some of their victories, because just kits you don't expect to be amazing have been really amazing, and I think that's really funny. Another great story for you is I painted Marnius Calgar, right? And, I'm expecting him to be this legendary champion, but his gloves of Ultramar or whatever, it's the new sculpt, are really for killing infantry. And I had him up against Tau battle suits and tanks and stuff. And so he wasn't near as good as the grenade launcher guy who was standing next to him. And so he kept getting shown up by his own trooper. And I and my opponent both thought that was hilarious. And so you got this guy with fists who's the chapter master and who can't roll a single hit. And then the random unnamed soldier in his squad is getting all of these crits and mortal wounds and all kinds of stuff and just doing work. And it was hilarious we were laughing the whole game. It kind of derailed the whole game just because it was so funny. And so it created this moment of, hey, this other troop was pretty fun. And of course, I spent all this time painting Marnius Calgar and trying to, hurry up and finish grenade launcher guy number 7 or whatever his name was, And so it really helped me to stop and reflect and think, you know what? As much as I don't love painting 20 or 30 of the same kind of mook or whatever you want to call them, these henchmen or random anonymous guardman, a lot of these guys really do, if they roll the dice right, get to tell their own story. And there's something kind of fun about that. And so it has given me the inspiration to go back and actually force myself to enjoy painting random infantry guys like this guy right here. He might die the second he gets in combat, or he might go on to be a really cool dude and tell a cool story. And maybe he'll be the guy who rolls a 6 and accidentally kills a named character. Who knows? And so it's fun to think about that. And just having that perspective of any model, no matter how big, no matter how small, could be important. I remember early on when I was more of an Age of Sigmar player, I had a Hobgrot for the Cruel Boys. And this Hobgrot squad of 10 guys ran out to fight Yndrasta, who's the big monster killer unit. And it was really funny to me that Yndrasta spent half the game fighting off these just pathetic... That clogged up some holes. Let's get these details back. She spent half the game fighting off these little Hobgrots who were worth no points just because they kept getting in her face. They chucked grenades at her and gave her some mortal wounds, and then they rushed in, and it took her 2 turns to kill them. And by the time she killed all these guys, the game was almost over. And so she, this crazy, powerful, superhuman, amazing character, didn't get to do half the stuff she should have done because of these lowly little Hobgrots who kind of fed themselves and sacrificed themselves to tie her up. And so you can have all kinds of fun little stories with even the smallest character. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about Warhammer and wargaming is you get to tell these stories that otherwise might not be told. It's not always about Primarchs and named characters. Sometimes it's just about random little Orc Grot number 7 who you can give whatever name you want to and make it silly, and he just runs in there and does his best, and sometimes he succeeds. And that's fun. That's a fun little storytelling element here. And so I would encourage you when you're painting, don't just focus on the big fancy models. They'll get the new model curse and get blown up immediately. Focus on the little guys too, like Crazy Boy here with his silly masks. You never know who's going to MVP your game. And so I thought that's a good reminder when I was playing the game that not every hero gets to be the hero of the story, and not every background grunt gets to be cannon fodder. Sometimes they get to succeed too. That's a good reminder for painting the little guys, is they're not just an afterthought. Some of these models have definitely seen better days. I'm trying not to put the paint on too thick, and yet some of these guys have been primed and stripped one too many times. I'm seeing there's some missing details already. And then I'm throwing my paintbrush. But I try to paint fast like this and do as many things one coat as possible. But once this is done, I'll have to paint slower when I get to the more detailed paints. But for the first couple coats, the metallics and then the base coat, I try to paint as fast as possible and not smudge the previous color, but also not worry too much about staying in the lines. I find that speeds my paint up. And then the next coat, the base coat, is where you kind of you're blocked in colors, and then you clean it up. And then from there, you start being really careful and painting really detailed work and cleaning as you go and tidying as you go and getting it closer to what you actually want the thing to look like. But for the first couple paints, go crazy. Don't mess it up purposely, but don't waste paint. But don't sit there and spend an hour painting something in a color that's just the undercoat for the undercoat of the color you're going to paint at the end. I've watched people do that, and I always think that's just painful to watch it. painful to think about. Oh, you spent 2 hours getting the perfect undercoating, and if it's a golden demon, sure, but if it's the color under the color under the color, come on. Just hurry up and finish paint and move on to the next model already. I don't know. I try not to spend more than an hour or so on a model. Like a big detailed fancy model, couple hours makes sense. But for a a little guy like this, it shouldn't take you 10 hours. Unless you're trying to go for like a show army. And there are people, and that's kind of their vibe. And I get it, and I respect it. But my hands shake. I paint armies, not individual models. And I would rather have a painted army than one dude painted flawlessly. But if you're the other way around, I respect you. But I'm not you. I am me. So don't be afraid to paint fast. Hopefully this video is helping you get over your inhibitions. And I'm trying to like watch the details really closely as I paint. And if something looks like it got a little too filled up, because this lead belcher will absolutely fill a gun barrel if you let it. Go back like that. Wait, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This guy stays in this army over here. Okay, making sure my tip is fine. I was bumping it with the brush. Meant to use this part of the brush. Okay, tip's good. All right. But I think it's important to really kind of try to bond with your army. That was one of the things I think that really I was missing in Age of Sigmar. I was 3 or 4 armies in painting that I had not played. So I did play with my Skaven, but my Carriage and Overlords, which was my very first video, I have never actually played them. I am still really sad about that. I really like those models. I love the look of them, but I have to confess I never got them to the table because I didn't have anybody to play with, and then I got busy, and then I had to switch jobs, and a bunch of other stuff came up. But that army just never came up, and so I was super bummed about that. And then I painted an amazing Gloomspite Gets army that I really loved, and never got them to the table. And then Luminor Realm Lords never got to the table, and Ogres never got to the table. And at a certain point, it was, I'm collecting these armies and painting them and having fun painting, but nothing's touching the table, and that's kind of depressing. And then I found some friends who wanted to play Warhammer 40K, and so I'm painting that and actually getting it to the table. And so all the armies I finished have actually seen table time now, and so I'm really happy about that. I'm hoping to play a game with my Imperial Fists here in the next couple days, and that's going to be awesome. And it's just, when you actually get it to the table and you get to really enjoy the fruit of your labor, it really does add something. Not to knock painting for painting's sake. Obviously, I've been doing that for years too. But being able to paint something and then actually use it as a game piece is just a really special feeling. Especially when you get to play with friends. And like for me, my friends don't have their own armies. At least some of them don't. Some of them do. But there's just something fun about being able to share something that you worked really hard on, and for them to get to enjoy your labor as well. I think this backpack kind of looks metallic. Not all of it, but I'm gonna put some metal on there, and I might change my mind later on if that's metal or not. But that's the nice thing about a base coat. You don't like something, just paint over it opaque, and you won't be able to tell. All right, very good. But army list composition really matters more than I think it does, especially since I am trying to get it to the table now. And so I've realized I need to slow down. On that note, and on the note of chaos, so I have 3,000 points of Chaos Space Marines I got through various trades in the magazine, right? And originally it was going to all be Red Corsairs, which is my favorite chapter. So I'm sitting there looking at my list, having played a few games now, and I realize, you know what? I don't actually want 3,000 points of Red Corsairs, because I'm never going to play a 3,000 point game. Like 2,000 point games are long enough as it is. I got kids, I got a life, I got stuff to do. I don't have 12 hours to play 3,000 point mega games. But instead of doing that, I could paint 2,000 points or half as many points, and then I could save some of the models and use them for something else. Or my Eldari army kind of opened my eyes, and I realized nobody watched my Eldari videos, but when I painted Eldari, I painted 1,500 points of classic Craft Worlds, and then like 1,000 points of Harlequins and a couple of Drukhari that it's going to be 1,000 points of Drukhari eventually. And it was really fun to play a list where not everything was exactly the same paint scheme. Like, it still looked cool and coherent. They definitely don't look like Space Marines, so it's not like I couldn't tell them apart. But what I realized is that for this army, I really don't have to worry about making sure that all of my Chaos Space Marines are Red Corsairs. Especially because my Hero Blackheart's the old model who's the wrong base and doesn't even look right anymore. But I really do like Perturabo. And so the Imperial Fists, or the Imperial Fist's arch rival, the Iron Warriors, are kind of cool, and they're kind of easier to paint. You know what would be really fun to do is paint that. And so I've decided that I'm going to take about 1,000 points of this 3,000 point army and do them as a smaller force of Iron Warriors. And so build an enemy for my Imperial Fists, get our friend Perturabo's army going. He's a fun dude. So I want to do Iron Warriors. And the other thing too is I hate painting hazard stripes. And so forcing myself to paint an army that's covered in hazard stripes will help me get better as a painter. And so I did a tiny amount on, ironically, one of my Imperial Fists. I'll show you that model. I can grab it. It's right here. So I haven't decaled it yet though, but I painted up this Vindicator and I did some hazards on it and some dirt effects. And it's cool and all. I'm not a huge fan of painting hazard stripes, but I think it came out okay. But I figured, you know what would be fun is force myself to paint hazard stripes until I'm good at painting hazard stripes. And especially freehanding that kind of stuff is really difficult. But that's what I'm going to do. I want to get better as a painter, so I'm going to paint the things that I find really difficult. And so I'm going to do that. And then the other thing is I have Fabius Bile in my army, right? And you know what would be really funny? I have all these Legionnaires in my army. What if I took 5, 10 Legionnaires or some Chosen? I think I'm actually going to use the Chosen. I have an extra squad of old school firstborn Chosen. Grab a squad of Chosen. Grab one of these extra Rhinos, because goodness knows I have too many Rhinos. Grab a Rhino, grab some Chosen, grab Fabius Bile, and give Fabius Bile a bodyguard unit. He can be combined with Chosen, and then they can ride in the Rhino and build out him a Fabius Bile mobile. And so I'm going to paint a purple Rhino and kind of pimp it out and make it look all fancy and give Fabius Bile his own little personal ride and a bodyguard squad. So instead of just having a random Fabius Bile on the board, I will now have Fabius Bile with a bodyguard in a Rhino. That sounds way more fun. And then if I want to soup that in with Red Corsairs, I can, or Iron Warriors, I can, or if someday I do Emperor's Children, it'll be ready to go. And so that will be a lot more fun than just painting all of my Chosen and all my Legionnaires. I think I have 25 Legionnaires and 10 Chosen and 10 Red Corsair Reaver or whatever they're called, and then 5 Havocs and all this other stuff. If I just paint all of it in the same scheme, that's going to be boring. But if I put some character into it and let Fabius Bile have a bodyguard squad, and half of them are one color scheme and half of them are the other, you know, half are Red Corsairs, and maybe do some black art, was it the Black Fleet or whatever for a Harkin World Claimer. I got him too from the magazine. Harkin World Claimer, I think he's supposed to have a Black Fleet kind of Horus-y theme. That might be fun to give him a bodyguard unit that's in his own colors. I haven't decided on him yet. But just mix it up where it's still all clearly chaos, but there's just a little more character to the army. Its character is actually better than uniformity. I didn't realize that until I put it on the tabletop and realized, you know what? I actually like when my army has a little bit of character, not everything's painted exactly the same way. Like the Tower, awesome, don't get me wrong. I'm glad I painted them almost all the same way. But then Farsight's a different paint scheme. I have one Pathfinder squad that's a different paint scheme. The Vespid Stingwings, whose name I forgot in the last video, they're a different paint scheme. That's fun. I actually like that. And so being free to do that is super important. One other funny anecdote I'll give you. Glue is also important. Make sure your models are glued well. I put a bunch of models on the table and immediately had a couple people drop a hand or drop a belt buckle or whatever, the pouches falling off of them. As you're moving your models around, stuff will fall off if it's not glued down well. So do your best to try and actually do a good job with your gluing. I've realized that. So I wrote that one down as a joke for myself on things I need to do a little bit better to prepare to actually play this game. But overall, it really comes down to giving my army more character and a little bit less of everything painted exactly the way I want my paint scheme to go, and more painting to tell a story. So, you know, you hear people say it, but it really is true. And so I think it's important. All right, so now I got Rune Lord Brass and Lead Belcher. These are going to be my primary Iron Warrior colors. So to celebrate the desire to not paint everything as as a Red Corsair. I want to start priming up a model to be a Iron Warrior here. And so for that, we got to have some lead belcher. So I think how this paint scheme looks is I'm going to hit almost everything. I don't know. Do I want to go lead belcher or do I want to go polished silver? This is such a pretty paint. Honestly, I'm thinking polished silver might look good because lead belcher, now that I'm putting it on these guys, it's pretty dark. I think I could use this to paint like parts of this model just to help it not be too much. But I think I'm going to go polished silver and just see what it looks like. I need to do a test model for this scheme anyways. So let's grab this guy right here. I'll knock out a test model and then we'll call this video done because I think I'm already getting close to the 30-minute mark. All right, so polished silver by Army Painter Speed Paints. Super love their paints. If they ever wanted to sponsor me, that is a sponsorship I would take in a second because their paints are pretty awesome. And then we are just going to slop this all over the model and go crazy. Yeah, that's a good color right there. And see, look how good that metallic speed paint just immediately picks out. Yeah, just goes right on, picks out all the details, don't have to do anything to it. It just works and it just pops. And then I can pick out details with some blacks and some yellows and some blues and some other colors. I don't really want that pouch to be metal. And it'll look great. And the other nice thing is the 2.0 speed paints by Army Painter, they really let you paint over them, I should say. And that's good because the original Army Painter speed paints had a reactivation problem. These speed paints are just the smoothest flow you can imagine. Just the nicest thing to paint with. I absolutely adore these paints. I would get a full set of them in a heartbeat. Not sponsored though, just really like the product. So we're gonna start with this. And then let me grab a reference photo here in a minute. Yeah, liking that. Okay, and then the other color I want to put on here, make sure there's no paint in that, is the Runelord Brass, because I believe, oh, that needs shaking. All right, I'm going to shake that while I pull up my reference photo here. Iron Warrior. All right. And I found a picture I liked online, just off screen. Yes, so they are predominantly metallic silver color. There's I have a little rock. Oh, here's a fun painting tip for you. If you buy aquarium rocks, the bigger ones make perfect shakers for your pit. So it's actually got an aquarium rock in there. I don't buy the metal beads. I just use aquarium rocks because I can also use them for decorations for basing. So sometimes they're basing bits and sometimes they are the agitators for my paints. Okay, and then we're gonna just do, here's one where we gotta be a little careful. Let's do this. Boom. 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 Yeah. And I'll go back and paint that bit white, I think. And then I'll go ahead and just do this bit metallic too. And then I'll fill that in with black. That'll be a solid black. Perfect. And black will cover metallic really easily. And then a little zip right there. Little zip right here. I have never liked painting shoulder pads. They have just never been my favorite step. Every shoulder pad has just some kind of weird detail on it that's like not hard to paint, obviously, but just slightly hard to get to and paint unless you like really break stuff out. All right, so gut check here. Do I like this? You know what? I do. I feel like I could paint some details on this dude and he would look real cool and really different and still be friends with the other Chaos Space Marines, but give me the variety that I have been craving. Do I have a little more metallic? Yes. Thankfully, it stays wet on the palette really well, too. All right, yeah. Imperial Fists versus Iron Warriors. That is going to be a fun game. There he is. We'll hazard stripe up the gun. We'll pop some black onto the shoulder pads and make this guy sing. I like it. All right, I'm feeling good about this guy. That's a fun paint scheme. We'll make that happen. And I think I've kind of rambled long enough about how painting has changed because I started playing. I want to have better army listing, really make sure that everything's cohesive, tell a little bit better story, put a little more detail into the little silly guys, and just being encouraged to do that. Because early on, every model was amazing, and then as I've painted over 1,000 models now, the little guys get kind of tedious. But I finally found the inspiration, and that was in playing, and then making sure that everything kind of stands out and is fun. But really, that's all there is to it. I'm excited to paint more models and get some more stuff to the table, and I think it's going to be a good time. And if you've got a fun goal, like I have somebody to play with, and if I paint this, I'm really going to get it on the table, it really has given me a lot more motivation than just pure stubbornness to get everything painted for the sake of painting it. So it's nice to have another motivation. But I'm going to let all this sit overnight, and then tomorrow I'll start putting details. I got these 20 dudes done, and then I got my test model metallicized so I can get him done. And then I've already painted some red Corsairs as well, too, so they don't need to be done. But eventually I'll go in and get all these guys up and done up. And some of them will be Iron Warriors, and some of them will be red Corsairs. And then if I ever need to mix and match them, hey, they work together. They're Chaos Space Marines. They work for whoever tells them to work together. And there's nothing wrong with that. So thanks for watching the video. I appreciate it if you made it all the way through. Likes, subscribes, comments, all that. Super helpful as I'm trying to grow my channel. But I appreciate it. And hopefully you've been hobbying along with me and enjoying some time just kind of thinking about how you paint and how fast you paint and what you paint and what it means to get on the table. So thanks for watching. Bye.